This interview is with Jack Parker, also known as Captain Jack Parker, and interviewing for the Oklahoma Historical Society is Rodger Harris. Today's date is August 15, 1991, and the interview is taking place here in the Oklahoma Historical Society in the archive. Jack, where were you born?
Dumas, Texas.
And that was what year?
1951.
And how was your family employed at that time?
My father was employed with Natural Gas Pipeline Company in the post-World War II natural gas boom of the Texas gas fields to get gas from Texas to northern regions to Chicago. He, as well as many others, went to that Texas Panhandle to work those jobs that became available. And I've heard from more than a couple of sources of the stories that they would tell of Oklahomans there to get jobs, and the employers, knowing that an interview outside, if a person was from Oklahoma and two other people were from somewhere else, the Oklahoman got the job. It was just it was an unspoken understanding that you could trust an Oklahoma worker, an Okie. These people would work hard, and that was generally the rule and not the exception. And my father took part in that work environment for about 10 years there before we were transferred back to Mountain View, Oklahoma. In southwest Oklahoma, where there was also a compressor station there from the same company. But those early years of my childhood were spent there 15 miles east of Dumas, Texas, out on the rather semi-arid high plains of the Texas Panhandle.
So did you start to school there then? Or?
Yeah, I started to school in first grade there at a place called Panhandle Eastern. There was another gas firm. There was a school there, so it was went up to the 8th grade, and still remember those first teachers, Mrs. Robertson, Mrs. Robinson rather, and some of those friends of my childhood, Randy McMurray and J.J. Swan, and all those big guys.
And so you came back when you were in second grade?
Yeah, in the middle of the second grade.
I say back. You'd never lived in Oklahoma.
Well, not really, but I still came back. We continued. We had friends near Arapahoe, Oklahoma. My dad being born in Wapanucka, my mother in Minnesota, later to Arkansas, and then her childhood also in Oklahoma. But we had friends in Arapahoe near Clinton, and my folks had purchased 30 acres at that time, so that gave us something to do there, always with intentions of coming back to Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. It was really there's a sort of I think an allegiance of an area that from the Panhandle of Texas, western Oklahoma, southeastern Colorado, and eastern New Mexico seems to be a bit of an allegiance, and maybe it's just because that's my early upbringing in that area, but I've always felt that there was a real closeness,
kinship,
a kinship to that general region,
yeah.
More of a regional kinship than state lines. And we would travel from Dumas to Arapahoe, Oklahoma, by auto, and would make our stops along the way on Highway 152 through Borger and Pampa and Sweetwater and Mobeetie and on back eastward. And would be a very regimented sort of a thing. We would stop at certain places and get the Dairy Queen ice cream, get our dog one. And after traveling, at that time, of course, it would take, you couldn't travel much more than 50 miles an hour roughly. And it was a pretty big trip back. We would take long weekends, as they were referred to by the company employees, where they would take a Friday or a Thursday and Friday and make a 4-day weekend of this, and either come back to Oklahoma or go up to Colorado and camp with my mother's sister also lived there, and her husband worked for Phillips Industry, Phillips Gas. Lots of gas, lots of petrol related employment there in the Panhandle.
Now, where was your mother from originally?
She was from Minnesota, and then was born in Minnesota. As a small child, moved to Arkansas, northwest Arkansas, and then on to Hinton, near Hinton, Oklahoma, and grew up in the Hinton area, and then later El Reno.
And your dad?
Is from Wapanucka. He continues to pronounce that Wapanucky, and I think that's just a local lore that continues that. And then he grew up in El Reno, his teen years then, and on where he then was in World War II, toward the end of the war, and disarmed the Japanese in Korea, and met my mother through her brother, and as those things go, and drove a taxi cab in El Reno, and then worked on a farm all of his life. Had an 8th grade education, but still had the savvy and the ability and the determination to carve out a very good life for his family and himself.
Now, did your mom go to school in Arkansas, or?
She went to school in Arkansas briefly. Again, that would be just a few years. I think by the time she was probably 12, they were back to Oklahoma. So she spent some early years there in Arkansas, and then in Oklahoma. Went to school at the country schools.
Yeah. Now, when you were growing up, do you remember any family relatives that were storytellers or cut-ups or anything like that?
There were several more on my father's side. My uncle James, to this day, J.W. Parker in Yukon, is a bit of a storyteller. My uncle Bill, deceased, I remember him helping us out on the farm there in Mountain View. We had purchased 80 acres, and it was a therapeutic farm. It was a place that after a 40-hour week, after an 8-hour day, my father could come home and work and relax and never stopped working. And of course, and I think that's why he's alive today, is because he's not stopped. He hasn't let up. But my Uncle Bill, probably, as far as I remember his voice as much as anything. He died probably by the time I was 14, but the way that he would tell me things and how he would express his excitement over things of, oh boy, you betcha, Jackie, you betcha, oh boy. And he could go into a quick little story there of and put you in awe about trying to relive it as he told it.
Now, what did he do for a living?
He worked in a flour mill there in El Reno. Worked in the flour mills, and later worked on the Santa Fe Railroad there, and then retired there in El Reno. Poor.
So he didn't come by that interest or kind of leaning towards storytelling or whatever from a job or anything, just because he...
No, it came from experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure his job maybe contributed to that some, but I think it came from growing up in a rural farm, large family background. And I think those days of the large rural families are all but gone. But I think that established or carried on at least a tradition of work and stay in there and work hard. Don't let anybody make you do anything you don't think is right, and do what is right. Do what you feel is right, and let all the other things that'll just come are a matter of simplicity. They'll just be there. If you need to go seine minnows for catfishing, then you need to fix the seine and go do it.
Now you went through school then in Mountain View, through public school system, right?
Yes, Mountain View.
And then did you go on to school after that, in college or whatever?
Went on to Southwestern State University, as it was called at the time, at Weatherford. Continued there for 3 years in in elementary education, and either lost interest or for whatever reason. Really, I think it was probably from getting married. That really should have been a big party. My first wife, I've been married twice. My second beautiful wife, still with my two kids. But my first wife, we really should have had a big party. It's what it amounts to. And that sort of ended as it did, as a good party. So that ended as a positive experience. I attribute it to getting me out of the college. And perhaps that's a blessing in disguise, because I'm sure I could have gone on to elementary education and continued probably a rural life in a rural setting. But I don't know that that would have given me any more advantages to enjoying my occupational skills anyway.
And you ended up in Oklahoma City then.
In Oklahoma City.
And what kind of?
That came at that time in 1972 when I moved to the Oklahoma City and opened a service station at that time. Yeah, a service station. P.S. Kerr McGee. Service is our business. Gasoline is a sideline.
That's kind of out of date now.
Well, people understood it and they knew it. And it was a small little operation, and my cousin and I ran it for a couple of years. And it really never panned out to be much, other than just leading me into another occupation of leathercraft with my sister, who had just come from California, who had come back from California. And after a lengthy stint with McDonnell Douglas and some of the others in the as a executive secretary, and my relationship with her and visiting California there in those 60s at a time of a great deal of social change, gave me a lot of insight also from a rural perspective into this television Vietnam War, these demonstrations and things, seen from a country boy, watching it on TV. The TV, I think, kept it apart from being, boy, I'm sure glad it's happening there. Boy, those goofballs in the cities, in the big cities, look at what they're doing. And I think that probably helped me a lot. My sister did there. She came back, then back to Oklahoma, came home, more or less. I think she got tired of that particular sort of high speed pace out there. And then we opened up the leather shop on 23rd Street here in Oklahoma City, and occupied that for some 18 years.
Now, what kind of products did you?
We manufactured the easiest way to explain that would be everything except saddles, boots, and holsters. Everything else, anything and everything else. Many custom jobs of sorts that people could find nothing else. For instance, historical. If one needed a historical covering for some particular documents, and there obviously would be nothing available there commercially, we could perhaps then do that.
So you did tooling and? We
did some tooling. We stayed away from traditional Western tooling. We were rather unique in Oklahoma in that we were a leather shop, but yet we didn't offer the traditional Western extensive tooling that requires so much time, and that we would dye the leather, hand rub the leather, and give it a finish that way, as opposed to tooling it. We did the tooling. We did some tooling, and I've certainly acquired hundreds and hundreds of tools to do that with. But that wasn't. I didn't find that rewarding. It just was more therapy for someone recovering from an illness, I thought. Possibly even brain damage. Yeah. But it is a very good thing to do as far as the hand-eye movement and all this. But we did more of designing, engineering things that would, and making them for practical purposes, and they're intrinsic to their beauty. But that didn't, and then developed that into belt buckles. of which actually I saw a couple out in the lobby out here, the Diamond Jubilee.
That was your...
That two of those in that case were our concept, and then we brought those up into the commissions and to the those committees at that time, and received their
Now, did
their
you,
blessings.
do you guys actually do those castings? Or?
We did not do the castings. We designed, worked with some folks here in Oklahoma, and those Lost Wax castings, and then a group in Michigan actually also on the engraved, two different styles. And we would design a program. We would come up with a concept, determine the marketability, determine how the product would be marketed, and carry it all the way through. The historic end of it, do the research, which has kept me here several hours in this building doing research to make sure that these were depicted accurately. And so it made for an interesting occupational skill at the same time. That we carried on many different buckle programs and marketing, and even nationwide marketing and nationwide advertising, and that kept us going. Probably without that, we would have closed our business 10 years earlier. But instead, we kept it there until nearly 1990, and it just was not financially, with two children, was not financially able to suit my needs. So with that, my sister got what has usually referred to as a real job at that time, and she works in a secretarial or personnel for the state, and then I have become a humorist.
Now, had you had any experience before in either writing or performing or anything like that before you?
No, just there at the leather shop. From the people, as we would advertise in some local publications, in the motels. It would be in the motels. The people that interstate and interstate folks would see and say, well, let's go by and see this place. This sounds like a place. Come and see the covered wagon and see, which we opened it up in actually a place called the Museum of the Oklahoma West, which is a collection of artifacts that I've...
well, now, what kind of stuff did you have in that, Jack?
Well, I collect relics. I collect Old West relics, old guns, old bullets, old things from sites, lesser known historical sites. The California Road, which has given me many hours of enjoyment tracing that old road across Oklahoma, and using a metal detector to determine and to try to find and locate and dig these things up and rescue these things from oblivion. And it really is exciting to
now, do you still do that, or?
I still do that. I sure do. I have a good friend, a farmer friend, and in the occupation I'm in, I get to meet a lot of people, and I'm able usually to find out landowners, to go on particular historic sites or lesser known historic sites, and to accumulate things from that site that at least to me gives me personal satisfaction. I'm really not into collecting a great deal of Indian artifacts, other than they relate to Indian wars and and to European settlement and Oklahoma settlement, and even to geologic, even fossils, anything pretty much western Oklahoma from I-35 west. I've amassed a large collection, which I call the Rainy Mountain Collection. Our buckle company was called Rainy Mountain Designs from the Wichita Mountain, of that name, Rainy Mountain, and called that the Rainy Mountain Collection. And I've kept this collection together, and I keep it in my home, you know, and I try to accumulate history. I just purchased an old Colt revolver that was plowed up near Tipton, Oklahoma, last week. I find them, I purchase them, and usually if I can get it from the farmers and the folks out in the rural areas, can pretty much take their history, well, for face value. That's all any of us, I think, can do, is to accept either someone's written word or the facts as they were reported. And as those things are reported to me, I try to document these in a way that can keep these together for their historical value, as well as I see as an investment toward for my family.
Yeah.
There's and that provides me with a lot of hours of fun.
Well, a lot of in the past, nowadays we especially see a lot of benefit from private collectors having used that, having had that hobby rather, and how a lot of historical and other kinds of similar organizations have benefited now because we now have additional information we didn't have before. So that's kind of an interesting possibility always for most collectors, I guess.
Sure.
Now you said you had the part of this collection at least on display there in the
we did shop. At the leather shop, and it was very interesting. I looked into people would say, and I don't know that you ever visited that particular location.
No, I did not.
So you 10-foot ceilings, one of the old homes in that particular district, north of Heritage Hills. So I had lots of walls to hang things on, and those were displayed there. And for years, people would say, this is just like a museum. As well as the leather and all the other stuff, it made for handy decoration. And so after so many years, I said, well, then it is going to be a museum. And of course, I try to determine what is a museum, and of course, it's any place that can share or assimilate and make available knowledge of something to people. And I certainly could meet that criteria. And would, of course, like I say, I could always spin a tale then about where this particular thing would be from. Someone from Connecticut might visit in the store, and they would make a comment about something, and that would lead to one thing and then another, and it always seemed to end up that there would be a story evolved there. And perhaps that's where I picked up my ability to continue to tell it 25 ways before I lie about it. I guess.
Well, that's not a new idea, though, is it? For a merchant to have some attraction for their customer or potential customer, everything from really silly stuff that I suppose some have had to legitimate.
No, it's not.
Do you remember that as a kid in any kind of store or anything like that?
No, not really. I don't know. I became interested really in Oklahoma history in high school. The Chronicles of Oklahoma were available there in our library, and the Battle of the Washita always intrigued me because I lived right there on the Washita, and or locally pronounced Washita, but on that river, and that always intrigued me because one thing was Custer, and I always associated that with the Little Bighorn, but in fact, the Battle of the Washita is an extremely interesting site, which I've been able to visit numerous times with the permission from a couple of the landowners there, and I've methodically tried to arrange the site. And when I go out on a site like that, I'm always
you mean recreate it sort of in your mind?
To determine, yes. Where am I going to find something? And what am I looking for? I've always paid close attention not to destroy anything, or at least make anything available that was historically significant, that would change anyone's perspective or would change the facts. And that's one reason I guess I get permission from the folks. I've always been so paranoid about being somewhere that someone doesn't know I am. And when I can locate these things, and when I can determine where those horses were shot, that those Indian ponies, and where I can determine where Major Elliott's men departed, and pretty much follow their route, and then locate 3 50 caliber casings I know that I know that I'm on the spot. I know that I found 3 shots that were fired rapidly from the gun. Of course, I have a gun like that in my collection, and can relate those stories. And of course, those men that fired those shots never saw the sunset. And those are the things that I can add a little bit of romanticism to, perhaps. But also, just there's nothing more exciting to me than to locate something like that, and to keep it intact, and to keep the story intact as much as possible. And it gives me personal. That's as good to me as finding a $20 gold piece.
Yeah. Well, now, do you think because you have kind of a serious interest in Oklahoma history and heritage that gives you a better perspective, maybe to bring forward kind of the lighter side of things?
I think so, because going from that past, it really is fun to watch somebody's eyes sparkle when they find out that. You mean that happened right here? You know, right here by our town, or you know, oh, you mean there is an old wagon trail that, you know, well, yeah, come right up here, let's look. Look for the watershed divide. You know, there it is. Well, you know, well, I'll be, you know, so that gives them a new perspective, all the way up to the Okies that went west, that became Okies or whatever after they hit Albuquerque. It gives me that ability, yeah, to take that history and lay it in there and put it in the form of humor, of our dialect, the way we talk. And again, those stories came up from people from other regions as, boy, you guys sure talk funny. Boy, you guys sure do things different. And in fact, we do talk funny, and perhaps to them, and we do things different. And they're actually rather hilarious when you sit back and look at it. But it doesn't mean that we need to change it. It doesn't mean that we have to change it just because someone doesn't think it matches their concept of what proper English should be. And I think if one wants to speak proper, correct, exact English, they should look at radio or television as occupations, as news readers, perhaps, because that's important. Those people are all generic, you know. I mean, you
can't tell where they're
one
from.
guy, yeah, you can be in Topeka, Kansas, and it's pretty much the same as Oklahoma City, as it is in Fort Lauderdale, as it is in New York, as it is in San Francisco. So, you know, I see that as a necessary part of that particular industry. And if someone wants to take it on personally, to polish that the English language and its pronunciation, I admire that, because again, that person's they're doing justice to the language, they're doing justice to themselves. But for those that don't really, that are more concerned with if the wheat is gonna make it this year, they're not concerned about whether their dialect, whether their vocabulary is all in order. And I think that's where the humor lies then. Is taking the extreme of one to the other. And I use many words in a presentation or a program that maybe I don't use myself. Many of them I do. And I always try to, for an interview or such, I would always try to probably talk with a little more direction to it as far as pronunciation, but I can avoid those things too, and just let it go. And as one gentleman told me just the other day, a garage. See, a garage would be correct with me, a garage, and not necessarily a garage or whatever the exact term would be. But I let those things. I take those words from my uncles, from my aunts, from my dad, from my mother, from friends. Everyone I hear saying, and I relate that, and I try to relate that in a way that makes us recognize that particular situation. That I have been there, and the country ways with the fingers and not the hands, and the way, the inflection that's put in it. Those are all things that we do or we've seen, but we just never really stopped long enough to think. To put that in a perspective, that makes it, such as a lady from Boston. And I did, in fact, meet a lady from Boston 2 or 3 years ago. I have a fictional lady I met from Boston 25 years ago. Just to put this in my own perspective, to get me back 25 years ago in Mountain View, growing up as a child, and how this lady would be inquisitive about, why do you do this, why do you do that? I've noticed this, and then it comes from Boston all the way down the cultural spectrum to Godebo, Oklahoma, just 7 miles from Mountain View there, and those comparisons from Boston to Godebo, those are the things that I have found most humorous with me and with other folks too. And for instance, her wanting to know, the lady from Boston wanting to know, how do you train the cattle to walk in straight lines? Well, of course, that's certainly a legitimate question, and I'm sure, and I've teased about a lady from Boston. I've said, well, if I went to Boston, I would probably enjoy fishing for lobsters too. And of course, the guy said, we don't fish for lobsters. Hey, I'm in the same spot as she is. So.
Exactly, yeah. Well, now, Jack, when you began sort of your effort to try to do something as a performing humorist, as opposed to a humorist that writes or does some other process, there really was nobody that I can think of that was doing much of anything like that. Is that your recollection?
Yes, it is. I outlined some, at that particular time, 3 or 4 years ago, I outlined, and leading up to the centennial of the opening of the land run locally here, at least, the unassigned lands, and the Olympic Festival and all the things were going on, I saw a real need there, and of course I saw the need. I saw the need to relate this to those that came here from other regions, and presented this first in a way to government, either to city or to state tourism, and saying, look, here's a way we can take these folks that come here, orient them, if you will, let them start their stay out, let them have an Oklahoma experience that is enhanced by this Western, this cultural, this out west, rural sort of, and that's what most people think of Oklahoma. They think of cowboys, Indians, dust, perhaps, the grapes of wrath, and other than that, people a lot of times don't really know anything else about Oklahoma. Yeah. So that was the concept first, was to take that and to then entertain these tour groups, and I even started for the first few months of this career, started as Wild West tours, and would arrange with folks generally in western Oklahoma, where a bus load of folks could go out to a creek, out in the middle of nowhere, hear the birds, identify the grasses, look at the trees, see the wildlife, eat the barbecue, play a few tunes, have a good time, go back. Then they would remember Oklahoma in a whole different way than they would from staying in the motel and I-40 in Meridian and walking underneath the freeway to a restaurant. I mean, that's one thing. And every time I see that, I guess I really need to get on or to state, I guess, or the city, whatever, about fixing that area up there at I-40 Meridian. You know, I mean, there's nothing. They need a sidewalk at least. You know, these people, and that's the only impression a lot of times they get of Oklahoma.
Well, that could be true of almost any place, though.
Well, sure it could, and that's why it's such a delicate matter. And our tourism department and the city tourism has done such a great job then in taking this Western heritage and applying it.
Well, now, did you get encouragement when you were starting? Did you get encouragement from either state or city or anything?
Yes, I sure did. but no one wanted to pay me, Roger.
Yeah.
Hey, man, that's a hell of an idea, Jack. I mean, let me tell you, that is a great
Not the
idea.
kind of
Man.
encouragement you were looking for.
So I took it upon, and now I see that that was in fact another blessing in disguise, because then I took that, and I would much rather be my own boss, my own private,
Sure.
than having to go that particular route. And I blame no one. I like to say I think it's a blessing, and I think they have taken. I think the state and city of Oklahoma City, but primarily state tourism, has taken our Western heritage and Indian heritage, and they have done wonders with it, with the red earth, with the just general promotion of. And many times people in Oklahoma, especially the citizens, don't realize, like those in tourism, that realize that people come here to see wide open spaces. They come here to see Western culture. They say, well, we don't have a Golden Gate Bridge. We don't have a Statue of Liberty. You know, what is it that, but that's the thing that I think people are coming here not to see. They don't want to see the Golden Gate. They don't want to see the Statue of Liberty. They don't want to see anything magnificent other than the sunsets, other than that wide open space, other than those prairie grasses out there blowing, and those cattle out there, and the farmers and the life and the carefree sort of hard life, hard work life, but carefree, otherwise carefree life of Oklahoma.
Now, when did you sort of realize that you were on to something that was working pretty well?
From the response that I would get from people, and I knew it there at the shop, because people would leave happy. They wouldn't buy anything, but they sure they were happy. I entertained them. I probably should have kept my mouth shut and let them look. You know, maybe they'd have bought something, but you know, they would always wind up buying something. It was a break-even sort of a deal, but it gave me that experience. Gave us that bit of social interchange that we. My sister and I at the shop would sit around and play intellectual games of sorts. We would guess from reading. And then we would quiz each other. So I felt like I was continuing my education there, and we did develop a fairly good library there of research books. But when I could tell it when from the applause that I would get from doing a program of going over words, going over customs, going over how we wave, and demonstrating and performing these situations. And when I would get through, people would tell me that's some of the best things I've ever heard in my life. You know, I would hear that and I would be humble. I mean, I was humbled by it. But yet I knew that it was right. I mean, I knew that it was on, and I think, in fact, it's right on.
Mm-hmm. Now, can you recall some of the more memorable places that you made your presentation at? 3 or 4 maybe, that events or dinners or whatever that you particularly thought was.
Well, there was one. It was a church group. One of the first things I did, I had some throat surgery to remove a malignant tonsil, or a cancer tonsil, and in January, in the very end of '88, and in '89, that's when I had already started this in '88, the Wild West tours, and knew that this was the route to go. So after riding a little stallion of death there for a while, I jumped back up and worked then with the Daily Oklahoman, Ann DeFrange, one of the feature writers there. That remarkable lady that has such a knack for writing, and she realized that this was a great human interest story. So it appeared on the front of the Sunday Oklahoma, and of course that went to every town in Oklahoma, and with that really began. That started it. And I took that particular photograph with a throat that was still pretty sore over here, with a neck that was sore at least, and but was able to do that, and of course share that, and that then started started me off. Instead of getting $25 and $50 for free, then it became where I could afford it as an occupation, and the response to that, the response, I guess that's the way you tell with anything. If people boo you, then you need to change. If they applaud you and say that's great, then you're doing it right.
Now, how many? Well, you're right. I agree. How many performances would you guess you've been averaging the last year or so per
in
month?
A year?
Maybe?
Well, I would say about 2 a week.
Mm-hmm.
2 a week on an average. Sometimes one, sometimes 4.
That's scattered about the state, or
About the state, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been down to Midland, Odessa, Texas, with a group down there, with a petroleum group, with transferees from Oklahoma back and forth, and actually can develop this program into a regional, because it is Oklahoma, but yet it's regional. I mean, it's what I consider Oklahoma, Texas, and perhaps some Kansas, regional. It's very, and I think that's generally true of the region. All of these things matter of fact, this weekend I'll be going to Amarillo, Texas, for a program. I'd gone to Plains, Kansas, about 6 months ago, and again, having to do with agricultural interests. These were co-ops, wheat producers, cattle producers. This group this weekend is our cattle haulers that haul the cattle to market and from, and I will entertain them in Amarillo, Texas. And of course it will, my roots of Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma, this region, are the ones I'll apply to that. And I don't think there's anything I can do or say that people won't realize that is part of their regional culture that they have. I have performed for groups, everything from black tie occasions to on top of picnic tables for the Oklahoma Wrecker Association. It was spring picnic, so it's in the park, in the state park.
Yeah.
So the best place to me looks like up on top of that picnic table. So it'll work there.
But you stick pretty much with your costume when you.
Yeah.
Regardless of the.
Today I did not wear I came rather casual today. I didn't wear my black tie with my buffalo bolo with a scarf slide here.
Mm-hmm.
I generally save that for banquet occasions, for getting real fancy.
Right, but that's that's part of it, isn't it?
That's part of it, sure. The boots, my old Fry boots that I got at the thrift store for $5, and I've been told those rounded toes, you don't ride many horses with those, Jack. And of course I say I don't. I ride deers with these, John Deeres. But I've been told, are you a real cowboy? And when I first started, I would wear a 6-gun. Mm-hmm. I'd wear the cotton pants, no watches, all genuine cowboy.
Yeah.
And demonstrate many times to the youth, to the kids in school, the life of the cowboy. I would have some of the Oklahoma emblem that I've actually constructed from a willow branch and the hide and the peace pipe and the olive branch, and let the kids see that and feel it instead of just seeing it on the flag. Mm-hmm. And explain those and make history, try to make that history to them, and again taking a few of the artifacts and try to make that history come alive in a way that maybe they've never heard before or never thought of, and teach them a little gun safety at the same time. Mm-hmm. Those programs are a lot harder than a humorous presentation. They're a lot harder. They require a lot more preparation. They require a lot more costume. But I have one guy asked me how I dressed, and I told him I guess with refined arrogance was all I could think of. But I do wear this, and it is. I wouldn't wear this in the pool hall at Mountain View necessarily, but it's one that gives me sort of an all-round, and I don't mind, where I go. I mean, I enjoy getting to be the star. Mm-hmm. It's great for my ego. Get set up there at the head table, and have people, you know, I get to talk to a lot of people that I know if I came just with my cap and my old shoes, that probably we would never discuss a lot of the things we discuss.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's an advantage, a definite advantage. One of my worst, one of the things I don't like the most, I despise, is to go to a program where I'm going to be a surprise. Sort of like I'm a joke, like we're going to pull a joke on this little boy. And I want you to come out then, you know, and then we're going to say that you're this, that, you know, hey, you know, leave it up to me, all right? I'll do the, I don't like surprises, but, and that's really only happened 2 or 3 times, and I've been able now to get through to those folks that we're not going to do it this way very tactfully. But that's one thing that I did that I didn't like, would be to have to be a surprise guest. For one reason, I usually never got to eat, and I always like to eat when I go to these. And I had a gentleman the other day from the police department, a function I'll do for them this fall, and he was new at it. I mean, you know, as you move into positions, if you never contacted anyone about the program or anything, and he wanted to know if, and I let him know what my fee was and everything, or honorarium I like to call it. And he said, well, now the meal, are you going to eat? I said, yes, yeah, that's definitely. I talk a lot better on a full stomach. And he started to ask me, he started to tell me, well, okay, the meal tickets are like $10.25, and I knew that's what he was going to do, so I politely interrupted him and said, and that's when I said, yeah, I always feel better on a full stomach. He goes, well, I'm new at this. He says, is it customary that we pay for that? Of course, with you know, I replied with this, yes. So you know, it gives me the ability to keep this, and I get to work with folks from the very simplest of programs up to things that are a lot more orchestrated, where I might be part of a program that there might be four forms of entertainment, or four things that are going to be going on, or many times part of a seminar, where maybe just recently the Oklahoma Indian Tribal Council sponsored this seminar on child abuse and sexual abuse of children, and these are heavy subjects where these folks have to sit through for 2 or 3 days, and by the end of that they're ready to lighten up.
Yeah.
And that probably makes my job that much easier then. But then I'm able to go in there, whether it's that or whether it's next generation radar. I mean, you know, these guys, or whether it's tax deferred annuities. They want to hear something besides tax deferred annuities and you know, next generation radar. Sure. and abuses of people. So the seminars I enjoy. I'm always well accepted at those. I get on television on the CBS affiliate here, Channel 9, about every month or two, as a guest, regular guest on the TV 9 morning. That keeps me in front of the people. PBS has done a program or two that has kept me there. So I try to, get to the functions that are that I feel like the Bolo Ball at the Cowboy Hall of Fame. I'm a lifetime member there. Those functions, I try to make my appearance there, just as another one of the people, and it gives then people a chance to get to meet me personally. Then I can go home. I can take my outfit off. I can put on my old hat, maybe some shorts or maybe just some jeans, and then go to some garage sales, which is my therapeutic end of it. But my daddy still keeps wanting to know, Jack, when are you going to get a real job?
Now, you know, Oklahoma has, well, certainly our best known Oklahoman, Will Rodgers, a humorist and entertainer, after dinner speaker, what have you, and lots of other folks, similar kinds of presentations have more or less helped with our identity, along with maybe some folks that writers and whatnot that haven't been specifically humorists that have dealt with what's it like to live here. I'm thinking maybe even people like Scott Palmade or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, who grew up in the same
Right.
state.
They're out in Mountain View.
Yeah.
His grandparents grew up there
Yeah.
for a while.
So, do you think that's sort of an undiscovered commodity that we've always had that only a few folks have realized, or?
Well, probably so. I mean, it must do something to you. It must free you up or something. Must give you a sense of life, and I think it comes from just simply probably from a combination of things, but the geography, the sheer geography of it, the climate, the culture, the history, the unique opening, the Indian settlements, the Native American influences, and all the way up through the Dust Bowl, and Will Rodgers, all these guys, I think have this. Best way I can describe it is the thing about an Oklahoman or a person from this region generally is that there's a very conspicuous honesty about them, and that's easy to recognize. It's not very, sometimes maybe not accepted by many, as many stories have told me from visits to larger metropolitan areas, that something as simple as opening a door for someone causes suspicion, because well, you must want something from me, or sitting down at a table, at a booth, at a table, on a bar stool at the cafe, and striking up a conversation with the guy for, well, those nice looking boots, where'd you get those? Where you from? And people are a little taken aback by that, I think. Wait, now, why is this guy starting to talk to me? He's either weird or, so I think that probably, and then they realize that, hey, this guy really is, or this person is genuine. And I think that's probably the thing about, I think, people from this region that stands out, just like a Will Rodgers, and all the other folks that come down, is there's a very conspicuous honesty. I mean, it didn't take you long to judge this man's character, and that's usually the case with most people from here, is that you trust them right off, or you should. They're trustworthy, and they're honest, and they work hard, and I think that was. I just read just the other day of a guy that I believe it was in the Okie program, the one interview that a gentleman had done, and the lady said the gentleman worked for a bank, some large bank, and he was going to deliver $60,000 to Dallas, and she was concerned and wanted to know, well, will they trust you with that much money? I mean, that's an uncovered. Well, now that's a lot of money, son. Will they? You mean they trust you with that much money? So it's a humble but yet a very honest approach to life, and I think that's what makes Oklahoma and the region so able to rebound from these boom and bust cycles that we go through with our gas and our agriculture and our petroleum products, that still in industry recession and this and that. And so we continue to rebound, and our productivity per person is always above the national average. Our very state motto of labor conquers everything we learn it from childhood.
Well, before we conclude this interview, we might eventually want to visit again sometime, but I wanted to ask if since you've been pretty successful at this, have your parents started to sort of take this a little more seriously than they did
They've
initially?
they always have. I kid about that, really. They've always supported me and what I've done. Now my mother, going through the depression, and I can tell you, the depression affected my mother, and as well as those others that went through it.
Sure.
And she still cans stuff and puts stuff up in the basement, 5, 6 years ahead. And I heard her just the other day, and it really came home to me that she said, and her back is hurting her. She's getting older. She's not able to do what she used to do. But she says, well, I guess I have 5 or 6 years. I've got at least enough stuff for my kids if we were to have another depression. And when she said that, and I've known that all along, but I thought, that really is a driving force.
Yeah.
For her to keep the staples of life.
Survival, yeah.
Survival and provide for her children. But that's the that's that spirit. She's always supported me. She's probably always really at first I think she really did suspect that it maybe a real job would probably be better if I could just get a real job.
Yeah.
But she realizes from the compliments that she gets about me and from the response that she sees.
Mm-hmm.
So she's very proud of that, and I'm very proud of them, of her and my folks.
Now I got to ask you one last question. You're not a real captain, are you? Of anything?
That captain comes from I'm the one that poles the boat when we catfish on the Wichita River. I pole the boat, and no, quite honestly, Roger, I use that because I wanted people to remember me.
Yeah.
To have a name.
Yeah.
But I didn't like anything else I could think of. So all I could think of was, well, hey, I'm a captain of the Wichita River, which Washita, of course, in Choctaw means big hunt, and I guess maybe they had a big buffalo hunt there. But the Kiowa Indians that are native to that Mountain View area, when they first came there in about 1800, they called that river what that river means to them, and whatever the word is, and I don't know, but it means river of fallen trees. And the trees wash in that thing, and it's a very, with upland flood control, of which Oklahoma was the pioneer in that, in the Washita drainage there, that's eliminated a lot of that now. But yeah, Captain Jack. People call me Colonel, that's all right, I don't mind. The captain will suffice.
Well, Jack, we appreciate it, and maybe we'll get the opportunity to visit with you again someday. And this concludes our interview with Jack Parker.